minutes. His new book is called Presidents of War, The Epic Story from 1807 to Modern Times. Michael Beschloss, welcome back to Big 550 KTRS here in St. Louis.
Thanks a lot, McGraw. Great to talk.
Okay, so first, you have some news in this book, not just history, but news, and let's sort of start there. President Lyndon Johnson could be criticized for lots of things with the Vietnam War, but you discover some very interesting news here. Tell us about it.
Yeah, beginning of 1968, American soldiers were about to face a big defeat in Vietnam, and the commander in Vietnam, General William Westmoreland, comes up with this plan to move tactical nuclear weapons into Vietnam and to use them if it looks like the Americans are going to lose the battle. Johnson got one word of this, and he was absolutely apoplectic because he knew that if that happens, Vietnam can go nuclear. It can bring in the Russian and the Chinese. You could have a nuclear war that could kill tens of millions of people. So he says to Westmoreland, shut this down immediately, keep these nuclear weapons outside of Vietnam, and also take all your documents about this plan, put them in a safe, make sure that no one finds out about it. And the result was that these were locked up for decades, and I got them when I was researching this book, and of all things, it was on the front page of the Sunday New York Times last Sunday. Not too used to that in the history book.
Yeah, pretty extraordinary stuff. What was it like when you uncovered those documents?
I think I said holy, maybe a less repeatable version of holy cow, and the result was that it really changed my book because we look at Lyndon Johnson as someone who made terrible mistakes in Vietnam, and that verdict really stands. But at the same time, here's a case where he really did a good deed because, let's say, McGraw, that the Vietnam War had gone nuclear, that would have happened over a war that we now know was a civil war in an agricultural country would not have been worth something of that magnitude.
Yeah. The book, Presidents of War, The Epic Story from 1807 to Modern Times. What is the thread that you found through all these stories?
Well, I went through 8 presidents from James Madison all the way up to the present and tried to look at what drove them to wage war, get America involved in our largest wars. And I'm trying to tell these stories behind the scenes. And they have almost nervous breakdowns in some cases. They draw on great strength almost always in all these cases from very strong spouses, very strong wives. And also here's a case where sometimes we got into war for false reasons. Mexican War we got in because James Polk fabricated a border incident that actually didn't happen. 1898 we got into war with Spain over the sinking of the Maine in Havana Harbor. Turns out the Maine sank from a boiler incident. In 1964, we got into Vietnam because Lyndon Johnson said that there was an unprovoked attack in the Gulf of Tonkin. He very quickly found out that there was no such attack. Yet, for the next 10 years, Johnson and Nixon waged the Vietnam War on that false pretext. My main thing, McGraw, is that the courage and wonderful performance of our American soldiers is constant over 200 years. The problem is that we haven't gotten always the same leadership from the White House.
Yeah. You're ringing a bell in a sense. And what is the message, right? I mean, we lived through the Persian Gulf War. We lived through 9/11. There were mistakes made there. We all want to support our troops. We all want to support our president. But, what's the message, Michael?
The message is that nowadays presidents can get us involved in a war overnight without even bothering with Congress, which they're supposed to do under the Constitution. And the best war leaders, people like Abraham Lincoln and Franklin Roosevelt, Lincoln the Civil War, Franklin Roosevelt in World War II, they said at the time they were better leaders because they got criticism from protesters, because people in Congress told them what they were doing wrong. The problem is when you have a president getting involved in war on his own, sometimes for political reasons, it doesn't usually end well.
Michael Beschloss, the book is called Presidents of War, The Epic Story from 1807 to Modern Times. I'm sure it'll be just as good as all the others. I spend a couple minutes with you about the news of the day. Superimpose this book on President Trump and what you're seeing out of the news today.
Well, it's something because in President Trump's case, here's a case where so far for a year and a half he has kept us out of war. And the real test of a leader is Let's say that something happens that, where it's a little bit ambiguous. Is this going to be a possible war that is essential for our national security? We all pray that he will have the wisdom not to do that.
Have you ever seen in America where it's so divided in that you look at President Trump and somebody sees a brilliant, genius man, and that same picture somebody else sees a buffoon? Has that ever happened before in American history?
Country, it would be dramatic to say that this has never happened before, but look at 1859. This country was completely divided over slavery, and nowhere more than in Missouri, as you well know as a student of history. Or 1940, when the country was completely divided. Do we go to war with Hitler or not? Compared to that, the divisions in 2018 are really pretty minor. America has this amazing ability to unite itself, and it will again.
Presidents of War, the epic story from 1807 to modern times. Michael Beschloss, good luck with the book, and you're always welcome here. Thanks for checking in.
Thank you so much, McGraw. Be well.